Hey guys, this will be video 3 for the how to restore a vintage Gibson SG. This is a 1969, and if you're just tripping up on this video series, if you go to video 2, I actually opened up the box and showed this guitar. And then in video 1, I just did like a discussion about if you were going to build a guitar, you could work from these plans right here. And I failed to mention on the very front end, and actually in video too as well, that my videos are not for entertainment. I mean, if you enjoy them, then that's awesome. But the only reason I started my YouTube channel was so that I could show potential clients the ability to restore a guitar or build a guitar, stuff like that. So I apologize to you guys that tripped up on the video series and were waiting for me to pull out a tool and start doing all the work. I do very little work in my videos because everything is really like theory and planning and theory. So you're welcome to stick around and just listen. You'll probably end up saving a lot of money if you'll be patient. But and I'm not going to complain about the guys that left messages in the past videos. I just turned off the comments because most people, they don't have a clue um, what it takes excuse me, to either build a guitar or especially to restore one. And as I already covered in video 2, this being a 1969, this is an extremely rare guitar. And I mean, they're out there, of course, but I'll only cover this briefly because trust me, if you want to know how to build a neck, I'm going to go into extensive detail for about the next 45 minutes, showing you how to build a neck. So if you're here to learn, then stick around or either subscribe forward. But Eric and I were talking about this guitar Sunday morning, and to his knowledge, he thinks that there's a strong possibility that this guitar has been sitting, the body has been sitting dormant like since the 70s. Nobody's ever attempted to do anything with it, or either they were either too scared or it was too expensive. And I will cover something briefly that applies to video too, because I was like, I don't know if this is the original dark walnut, et cetera, et cetera. And it's so funny because, I mean, it hit me later on. I got to think, I thought, well, everything about the control cavity's dark walnut, and everything about this pickup route cavity is all dark walnut. So it's a very strong possibility this was dark walnut. And I'd mentioned seeing a little bit of cherry right there. Um, I don't know. Maybe some of them got shot an initial coat of cherry, and then because there's a little bit of red right here. But for the most part, I think we're on the right course by considering this guitar it could have been a custom order where it was a custom, but they didn't want this center pickup. And I know Gibson would do that even back in the 50s and whatnot, and I'm sure they did it in the 60s as well, and maybe further on. So this very well could have been a chrome custom with two pickups. And even Eric had mentioned he wanted to go back with the two pickups initially, and then eventually we started talking about let's take it in the direction of an actual custom. Okay, so leaving that on the table, but I want to clarify that about you guys, or in other words, I can't please everybody, and as soon as I try to please one group of people that wants to sit on their sofa, I mean on their armchair and be armchair quarterbacks and tell me how I should run my video series, no, you're at the wrong place because it's taken me over 5 years to get 891 subscribers, and I've communicated with everyone that's ever left me a message, whether it was for business or to help them figure out how to do something. So if you're here to tell me how I should promote my channel, I don't want my channel promoted. I don't. I've already turned down advertising with YouTube and all that jazz so that I intentionally can keep it as small as possible. So on that note, let's start talking about building a neck for a custom, a vintage guitar, and how we should go about doing that. Okay, Eric and I, because in video 2, I had shown the flamed Honduran mahogany billet that I had, and then I had made this statement about, if you want to know the truth, uh, what would have been historically used in this even in the early '60s and whatnot, it would have been this right here. it would have been a real clear Honduran mahogany. So it was really cool because I only mentioned those things in video too. And then when Eric contacted me Sunday morning, we spent about an hour talking about, everything related to this project. And he was the one that said, what do you think about just going with the traditional mahogany and then staying dark? And it was so cool because he kind of presented all the things to me that I was kind of wanting to present to him, because the more I looked at this project, the more I realized, if you're going to restore something like this, especially since it has not been butchered before, then make certain take it back original. And we had even talked about strengthening all this area up in that pocket. But nonetheless, it was his decision to go ahead and go with the traditional Honduran. And I had already bought some from Woodcraft, and it's just a really beautiful wood to show you. This board was about 4 feet longer, or probably about 3 feet longer than what you're looking at right here, because you can see where the neck was roughed out. But when you're buying your wood, go to Woodcraft. Why? Because this stuff is kiln dried, KILN. It sits in their air conditioned, controlled environment 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, as far as moisture content, you're in exceptional shape. This is not wood that you bought from some lumber supply house where they store it out in an open area. So, but if you look down this board, okay, so that's what you're looking for first. Precision straight. I mean, just super, super straight. I did the planing. It was rough, so I planed off about a 16th of an inch on both sides. That's called surfacing two sides. And then what it revealed was some really clear, beautiful, Honduran. One little knot right there, one knot there, one little knot there. These are little pinhole knots. But the cool thing about that, you're able to work around them and keep them out of your work. So after you pick up a board, and there were about 7 or 8 of these on the wall, and the first thing I go for, I start picking up every one of them. I want the lightest one. And then when I find the lightest one, I verify that it's the straightest one, or at least it's really, really straight. And with that board, it was both. It was perfectly straight on all sides and light as a feather. So, and if you want to know just how stable, let's see if I can get that in the camera. Just so it doesn't shake. I'm trying to get the white in the background. Okay. Now, my theory has always been this. If I'm building a multi-piece neck, if the little pieces that I rough out, they're roughly what, three quarters by, no, this was the 13/16 by whatever, but it's roughly 5/8 right there. If it will stay perfectly true in that small of a state, I can guarantee you pretty much for lifetime, this neck is this neck is never going to move. But if you come in here with like a large board and you just rough it out kind of large, and then you go ahead and put your fretboard down, and then your fretboards, maybe it's large or maybe it's cut down to size, and then you do all your frets and then start trimming everything. Once you start relieving all this material, like when you start radiusing it, you have no idea what's really going on with that neck. Because I can assure you, once you start radiusing this back, by nature, these necks want to pull back about a 64th of an inch. That's just natural. They want to relieve back a little bit. And then you have to clean it up and get it nice and flat again. But it's truly minimal. But if you build your neck top just a S4S wide board, and then you start relieving everything, then you have no idea if maybe one of these were problematic. Because I've actually roughed out 4 or 5 boards in a row, and then one's just ever so slightly problematic, and then you have to make the determination. Well, if it's twisting, then I discard it. But if it's just pulling to one side a little bit or pulling to that side, I'm exaggerating, of course, but if it's maybe just pulling a little bit, then I'll make the determination as to whether I work with it or whether I discard it. But the beautiful thing about this, I don't know if you could tell, that's a 3-piece neck. Okay. And I'm not going to waste time trying to show you where the glue lines are, because if you can't see them, then that's the sign of a good builder. Okay. And we'll talk about this stuff some more in the future, but where I'm going with this, if you go to Woodcraft and you buy your wood in the controlled, air conditioned environment where it's climate controlled, then odds are once you start roughing it out, it's going to stay nice and true. Honduran is probably the most forgiving wood that you'll ever work with, even if it's in a slightly moist environment, or dry, or vice versa. But nonetheless, this one is. I only want to show it because I want you to see, and I'm going to show you a cowboy's way to achieve this perfectly flat surface right here. Because keep in mind, when we start radiusing the back, I do 99% of it with machine work, with router bits, but most people don't. They just shape them by hand. But if you start, this is the most important surface in the whole neck, other than obviously the given, the widths and the lengths and stuff like that. And then this one is second. Now you can see how thin that is. That's because that's going to receive a 1/8 inch thick overlay that will probably be Honduran as well to keep it as light as possible. But it will, you can see how nice and true it's staying. Okay, so on that note, let me hang this back up. And I'm not going to start talking about how I glued them up, but I've got a fixture that helps me keep everything under control. But I say that to say this: when you rough it out, just plan on roughing it out about a sixteenth of an inch larger. Like a 32nd on the top and 32nd on the bottom, maybe a little bit more right here to give yourself leadway in the event you screw up your pitch and you have to shift a little bit, and certainly make certain that you leave enough length, because I'll talk about this neck in the future. This neck that you're actually looking at is not the neck that I'll be using on this guitar. Anytime I'm building a project, I haven't built a neck in about 6 months, maybe, no, it's probably been about 4.5 months. And I'll be, if I'm going to come right out of the gate and go straight to the finish line of building that first neck, I want to build a neck for myself or another project, but based on this project here, and then just make certain that I verify that, yeah, I'm up to par with all my machine work, and didn't make any mistakes other than, look at this little hiccup right here. So that even if this had been perfect for this guitar, this wouldn't have qualified, because we're not going to be doing a veneer on the back. And all of my guitars, I always do a stinger on the back. And it was to the point to where I had already made the decision, yeah, I'm building this neck for myself. But even in addition, it was kind of funny. I was addressing the pitch here, changing the pitch, because originally I started out at right at 14 degrees, but then when I did my rough out, I ended up almost closer to 15. Well, I had to clean that up, and what that did, that moved my nut location back a little bit, and when it did, my neck was too short. So be real careful about, if you do all your calculations and you go, okay, I've got to be exactly 28, or I've got to be exactly 1 1/4 or 1 3/8 or whatever, don't go anywhere near those dimensions. Make sure you're about a 1/2 inch too long here, and about probably a good 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch too long here, because that will give you plenty of room to shift the neck. I hope you guys understand what I'm talking about. And if you don't understand that, then you don't need to be building a guitar. And if you do understand that, you've probably addressed that before, where you tried to rough out too close. I went ahead and machined these very precise, so I could use them in the video. And you can see that line right there. See, this one's still a little bit fat, but actually it would get machined even more. Okay. So the first thing is the most important thing, you want each surface that is going to be gluing together to be wire brushed. You want to wire brush with the grain, open up the grain, and then wash it a little bit with a damp cloth. And then let's say there was another one on this side. Well, then you would be wire brushing these two sides here, and then that would be gluing together right there. And then if you had a third leaf on this side, then you would be wire brushing this side and this side right here. And there's nothing, don't think that if you had a 3-piece neck or a 7-piece neck, because a lot of the necks I've built in the past, they're actually like 7-piece necks, where just try not to look at this side right here, but you might have some sort of center join there, and then you've got like a real beautiful maple, real thin maple, like a 1/64th sight line, and then you've got this beautiful two little lines of maple going up either side. That ends up being a 5-piece neck. I think that's kind of silly to me. I still think that's a 3-piece neck, but they call that a 5-piece neck. And then you can do a 7-piece neck as well. So if you're going to do a multi-piece neck, even if you're just doing three boards like this right here, don't try to glue all 3 of them at the same time unless you've got just a really good jig. There's nothing wrong with just gluing 2 on one side and let them dry. With the tight bond, it only takes about an hour and it's ready to pull out of the clamps. And then glue that. Let's say you were needing to glue this leaf here. Once you got these 2 glued up, now position this and glue these up. And one thing that I do definitely do before I do my glue up, I do my precision cut work on the end, so that when I'm sliding and getting everything located, I know that as it's tacking, as long as the butt ends right here are perfectly flush, everything else about these pieces that are going together, they're going to be perfectly true. Okay, so just keep that in mind. In other words, dry cut it first. Don't worry about the end. You could cut the other end if you wanted to, but just always be working from like the heel down here, or the tenon. Okay, I'm going to try to figure out how to make this video 17 minutes, 18 minutes effective, but also not try to show you how to build a guitar in 30 minutes. That's impossible. But what I can do is I just had those general conversations. Typically, I just want to clarify that you're cutting out, if your board's wide enough, then you might end up with a 2-piece neck. But if your board is a 4/4, then you're going to be doing a 3-piece neck. Excuse me. And all of the Benedetto videos that I watched and whatnot, all of Benedetto's necks were 3-piece necks. And as I said, that's exactly what that is. And if you did a really good job selecting that wood and making certain that you put them together properly, it'll look like a 1-piece neck. Okay. So after you've got it glued up, I'm going to show you a cowboy's way of getting it true. At a minimum, you've got, now this is what I would call a S4S, or surfaced 4 sides, or square 4 sides. Anywhere you check it, it should be true. It should be perfectly square, regardless of which side that you're going from. That's called S4S. But what's most important is the glue lines, in order to conceal anything that might be going on there. So you have to have a beautiful surface right here, and also make certain that you don't have any tear out down here, because if you had tear out and you glued them together, well, that tear out's going to remain, and you might not have enough thickness there to plane it off. So be real careful that your 2 sides, that are perpendicular to the fretboard are perfect. Why? Because we're going to be machining all this off. We're going to be surfacing this and getting it nice and true, because it's going to be very unlikely that you would be able to glue 3 boards together perfectly, and then all of a sudden, then you don't have to do anything to them because one's going to be just a little bit high, a little bit low, or something like that. So you want to make certain that you leave yourself a little bit of room. And I'll show you a very quick and very simple way to, after you get the 3 boards glued up, just plan on, we're wanting to take we're wanting to have some sort of a trough so that our neck is in that trough like that, but the exact same distance here as it is up here, right? And then we're able to come in with a very simple router setup and with a very basic bit with a bearing on the top, and then just machine off that surface. And you know, it may seem like when I joke about calling it like a cowboy's way to do it. It works exceptionally well. But how do you get that in there and make certain that it's true? Well, you go to your table saw and you cut a couple of little blocks that are a little bit more narrow than the neck because you want them to fall out here in a minute. But I'm just going to do this and show you kind of how you can do this. So obviously you've got this configuration going on right here, and then you're getting ready to stand these up. And I've even got these 2 boards marked where I know that anytime I'm working with them, anytime I'm working with them, I've got the little circle and the arrow. I always know that I'm going to be machining on the, I'm always going to be machining like this right here. So you simply take, and this needs to be relatively true. So you don't want it to be sloppy, but just drop this in. Okay. And actually, I did butt that up, but you don't want to butt that up because you want to have somewhere for the router to run off. And I'll just do it. I already had these positioned. I use a C-clamp not because I want crushing pressure, but I like the C-clamp because I can use it like a caliper. And keep in mind, I've paid a particular attention to make certain that everything's pushed down. I'm just going to blow through this, but okay. So your little blocks fall out, but your little blocks made certain that you kept that nice and true, and now you're able to damage that body. I'm gonna bend that up. No, I can't because it's crooked. But now you're able to come in with your very basic router, and no sense in pushing into the poplar because the bearing will burn an indentation in it. But the only thing that you need to be important here is this surface to be flat. And I did true these up on my table saw before I started working with them. But now you're able to come in here and just freehand out the interior and leave just a little bit of material on the side, and then make your final pass with the bearing just barely running against that surface. And see, this is why I left that end right there, so I've got a little bit of room to come off of it, but still make a real good contact. And then go back up the other side. And then once you remove it from the little trough, and see, this doesn't have to be, you don't want this to be built up. Like, you wouldn't want to glue these together like a little bit larger, because you want to have this universal so that you can do like a classical guitar, or something with a wider neck. And then you're simply just getting all the stuff off the table. And then what you'll see a little bit of ghosting where the bit moved over. And then at that point, it's a very simple process of coming in with your STMAC block with 120, and then just Well, what you can do, you can do a little bit of pencil marks on there, but not much, because all you want to do here is just clean it up a little bit. And what you will have done, you will have machined a beautiful, really precise outside line right there. So that when your fretboard goes down and glues and clamps, because see, you'll be cutting this out and here, but if your fretboard goes in on an angle, then when you do clamp this down, if you had not tapered this yet, and I'm going to show you something differently because I go ahead and radius the back of my fretboard and taper them, I mean the lower before I glue my fretboard down. But if you wanted to, you could go ahead and glue your fretboard down at this point and then start doing your tapering and then do your relief work on the back. I don't like that because in the event even this little perfectly S4S unit right here has a tendency to want to move in a certain direction, I want to discover that so I can clean it up again before I glue my fretboard down. Okay? And that's why this guitar right here is basically a truly finished guitar to a degree. It's really close, but it doesn't even have the fretboard on it. And if it's perfectly true, you know, no twist, no back bow, no forward bow, relief or anything, imagine what's going to happen once the fretboard goes down. As long as the fretboard is perfectly true, this guitar is never, ever going to have an issue, ever. Okay? So not just that guitar, but this one's up. This guitar's been sitting over here on this table saw probably for 3 months, if not 4 months. It hasn't even been sealed. Well, I take that back. I did seal it on the top, and I sealed it down in the truss rod channel, which we're about to discuss that in extensive detail. So it's sealed internally, but the same thing. And let me see if I can put my money where my mouth is. I mean, look at that. So if this thing is not moving at all, and it's perfectly true, and it doesn't even have the fretboard on there, you know that you're always going to have a quality guitar. And that's, I'll show you briefly, that's what this neck is going to look like once the fillet gets epoxied in, and then the little header up here gets epoxied in. See, you have to machine that on the bottom to fit around the truss channel or the truss head. And then once it gets shaped, you have all of that wood left in there, incredible strength, and it's just a great job. Okay, and I've never seen anybody build a neck that way, probably because it's really difficult, but I would rather it be difficult on the front end, but guarantee that I have an exceptional job rather than be easy, only to possibly ship that neck to Japan, Australia, the UK, Louisiana, Arizona, et cetera, and then get a phone call to 6 months later, a year later, and they're like, "Oh man, this neck just went crazy and it worked." I know that the way I build my necks, that will not be an issue. Okay. So how do you put it together? Well, let me check the time. Was it 26 or 28? 29. Okay. You have to seal this with the nitrocellulose lacquer. That's going to be the most important step of the entire build. And with the double adjustable truss rod, if you've never seen one of these, this has a flat plate on the top. It's a flat bar, and then your round bar on the bottom, and then it's double. You can either, okay, if this is the end of the guitar, and if you want back relief, you want the neck to bow back, then looking at it from this end, you turn it clockwise. If you want forward relief, then you turn counterclockwise. And right here, see, that's the neutral. And when you turn it about 1/16 to eighth of a turn, it's already beginning to get into tension. So when I build these guitars, they're neutral. Even once the fretboard is down and the frets are in, they're neutral. And that guarantees that you're not fighting, a particular neck, because everybody wants to set their guitar up differently, or at least they should. And with the double adjustable truss rod, you can do just that. You could take forward relief so you can drop your bridge really low, or you could take back relief until you flatten the entire fretboard out, and then for extremely low action and play like the Stanley Clarke type tapping stuff. Okay, but let's get her neutral. Okay, if it's round on the bottom and flat on the top, then that is exactly what needs to be going on in your neck. I do my initial machine work with, I'll do this very quick, I'll hit this briefly. I do an initial alignment with an 1/8 inch bit to find the center. Step up to the 1/4 inch. Start doing your plow work, and then you put your truss rod in upside down until it's right at the round is sticking up. Then once you get to that point, now it's time to convert over to your 1/4 inch radius. And then you make about probably 2 to 3 more passes, because you want to work your way to the finish line. Because you could install this truss rod flush with the top, but I don't. I take them down about another 1/16 of an inch, because the truss rod is right there. Still plenty of wood left in the neck, even by taking it down an additional 1/16 of an inch. And then even once I get out to this point right here where it drops down and it receives the rod, see, I have to step down right here about 3/32 of an inch, and then I run straight out. So even out here, see, this is basically a finished thickness neck. It's still almost, it's probably over 3/16 of an inch thick. So there's plenty of wood still there. Okay. So once you get her fit, I always end right there. Guarantees, I can put a screw through here and not worry about the screw. Because see, if this was up here, it's not going to work, because you're not going to be able to get a screw through your cover unless you had a really thick cover. I take that back, overlay. But I typically don't do thick overlays on most of the guitars. But at this point right here, now you have machined this nice little fillet out of the exact same Honduran mahogany, light as a feather. This is not necessarily for structural purposes as much as it is just to do a really beautiful finish. And then I'm going to be epoxying this in, and I actually will make certain that I even seal the back side of this. So when this is going together, okay, it's just a sweet, tight fit. And this is where it gets a little tricky up here, where you have to come in with your little additional block. And then see, you should have machined that so that it's just a sweet fit, but then you're able to come in, because it's radius. If it's round right here, I want it to be round on this bottom edge. And therefore, when all this gets epoxied in and dries overnight, then I have a small trim router that has a special base where I have a dovetail bit that hangs down flush with the bottom. Then I take my trim router and I just run it straight down the neck, and it machines this perfectly flat in one pass. You don't want to be chiseling on this and crap like that, because if you scratch, or if you score or scar, whenever you install your fretboard, wherever that scar is or that serious scratch, it's going to be problematic, because the guitar we're building here, this is a clear coat guitar. This is along the lines of like building a jazz guitar, where you've got like a maple neck, and there's nothing more dangerous than having a maple neck where you've got a dark fretboard, because any imperfections in that maple is going to show up. And we don't want that. Well, you don't have to, because if you do a good job building it, then that's what it's going to look like before you do your trim work. But I do take a pull saw, a flush cut, and I saw that off right there first, and then I run the router down it. And then I've got a really beautiful join right here. Shows that you care about your work, so that if in the event somebody ever removed the fretboard in the future, they would see that whomever built the guitar took the time to do really quality machine work and fit work. Okay? And that's how to build a historically accurate neck with the added benefit of the modern adjustable truss rod. Another really nice thing about this is it protects the industry from fraud in the event someone tried to pass a guitar off as like a authentic, original guitar. Well, anybody out there that's familiar with guitars, as soon as they pull the truss rod off, the truss cover off, they are able to immediately realize that, okay, well, this was a replaced neck, but wow, look at the perfect fit work there, as I showed in the other guitar. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, just go back to where I showed you the two other guitars. Okay, so again, for you guys that are looking for entertainment, there's nothing really entertaining about building a guitar, and quite frankly, it's pretty boring and it's pretty lonely in the shop by yourself, and it's just all about detail, 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 and planning and planning and planning, communicating with the client, stuff like that. And all of a sudden, right there at the last on this Sunday morning, the client changed his mind and said, "Hey, what do you think about going with a ebony fretboard?" Amen. Let's do it, brother. So it was awesome that he was comfortable enough to present to me an idea to make a change, and I hadn't just gone off the deep end and just immediately started building his guitar. So you want to always leave enough room to make a little bit of changes, or if he had mentioned something like, "Hey, what do you think about going with maple?" Nah, that's when you need to step up the plate and talk him back, talk him off the ledge. Okay. But I agree, Eric. The ebony will be really beautiful, and actually, it will be in keeping with the custom. And I had forgotten about that. That the custom, whether it was a custom Les Paul or a SG custom, it would have been an ebony fretboard. Okay, let me check the time. 37 minutes. It's not terribly bad, and I have to always remind myself this is a ton of information. And and again, for you guys that are interested in, just entertainment, I don't have a problem with you checking in, but I don't appreciate it when people leave, silly messages about what I should or should not do, and they don't even read the title of the guitar. I mean, the title of the video, how to restore a vintage guitar per historically accurate specs. Well, what does that mean? That means you got to do a lot of research and a lot of planning, as I've already clarified. And unfortunately, that first one or two videos, there's not much work going on. Okay. But I'm very happy with this, even though it's not going on this guitar. What will it be going on? I have no idea, because what I did, and just always keep this in mind when you have an unknown project, I have this one set up. See, that's the 19th fret location, and that's the 18th fret location for a 24 and a 625 thousandth scale. Yeah, 24 points. Okay, 625.48 millimeter, or a 24.625 scale. Sorry. Uh, this is a little bit shorter than what I normally work with, but that's what would have been on the 1969. Okay, and you have to be careful. The longer the scale gets, the further that headstock gets away from the body, and the more likely it is to gravitate into a headstock diving guitar. So that 1/8 of an inch helps just a little bit to bring that headstock in and help. But typically, most of the guitars I build, I like installing the neck at the body at the 18th fret location. And this guitar is joining the body at the 19th fret location. And what that means is just that. Well, sorry about that. I go one fret deeper. Let me turn it this way. I need to stop talking about this because I'll end up rambling too much. But what I did want to cover is, if you go ahead and machine this to where you would be mounting at the 18th fret, if you change your mind and you sell this guitar to someone else, see, that's the 19th fret location, and that's the 19th fret arc, well, then I can always come in here and machine that material out, okay? But you can't put it back. And if I wanted to build a guitar and mount it at the 18th fret, then if I went ahead and machined that, I would have gotten myself in trouble. And I went ahead and did the engineering on the actual heel, even so I know that I got plenty of neck there, that if I wanted to, I can put this over on the shelf. Once I seal this interior here and do a little bit of ingrain sealing, that thing can sit on the shelf for a year, 2 years, until I ever work with it. Okay. I'm not going to start talking about machining the taper, but one thing that is critically important, you want to keep this S4S and the same width here as it is right here, so that you've got some sort of true reference point when you're beginning to do your fit work. If you went ahead and tapered this, it might be a little bit of a problem when you start trying to lay out and actually verify. See, I don't know. I have no idea if off the center line of this body are these locations perfectly accurate. I'm going to say they're fine, because they are located in relation to these pick guard mounting screws. Even if this was off a little bit, I'm going to put the neck in off. I'm either going to put the neck in high, low, or on I'm going to exaggerate one direction, and it wouldn't be visible, but if this is off a little bit, well, it was always off and it always worked. So that's what I meant by I'm going to be building the neck around this actual body. Now, Eric and I both came to the agreement that we need to repair all of this. And in '68, they did not have this deep V design. They just had a S4S mortise and tenon. It was mortised out, and it was radiused on the back, because this is pretty important. It won't take this a second. Okay, typically you have your jig and you come in, and if the jig is tapered for your pitch, you come in and you route up, you route in, you route over, and you route back. And what that does, it leaves a round corner. When I saw that, I immediately realized, wow, this machine work was done the way you would do a dovetail joint, where this somehow, I hope that's in the camera. I'm going to have to show it like this, but this would have been machined overhead. It would have come in like this, and then it would have exited, and it would have been a 3/4 inch a bit. Why? Because that's a 3/8 inch radius in the corner. So I hope that makes sense, but that's how it was machined right there. It was machined from overhead, not like this right here. But Eric decided that, hey, he didn't like this, and I don't either. It's so weak. So this is going to be cleaned up, squared up, and it's going to get a true S4S joint. But I'm not going to be coming back here and routing any of this around. It's just going to be square, 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 square. Everything about it's going to be square. And then when this goes in, then this will just go in like that. Okay. So I shouldn't have brought that up, because that's kind of hectic just looking at it. But I just wanted you guys to know that we are going to be changing that, and then that will change how I actually machine the tenon. So if you're getting ready to restore your guitar, what I meant by it was I'll be able to, once this tenon goes up here like this, and the fretboard goes in, it'll look 100% historically accurate. No one will know that we came in and really cleaned up and made an incredible improvement, because The problem with this right here, I guess I'll have to keep talking about it. The only glue that is in this joint, okay, look how clean it is. There's no glue residue right there. There's a little bit of glue residue right there, and there's a little bit of glue residue right there, and just a little bit right there, a little bit right there. So when this neck got glued in, it didn't even have glue around the 7 sides. One side, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It only had it here on the bottom and there on the bottom. It was barely enough to even hold the neck in. And as soon as it takes one fall, it's going to blow out. And as I told Eric, it wouldn't surprise me if the reason this is not damaged right here, it would not surprise me if this guitar was in the trunk of a car in the dead of August in like Louisiana, and it's extremely hot and extremely humid. It wouldn't surprise me if that neck, if they came back and pulled the guitar out of the trunk and pulled out of the case, and I bet you, I would be willing to bet you that the strings had pulled the neck out of the body, and then they were like, oh crap! So they just went ahead and took the neck off, stuck it in the case, and then and now we're doing a video. So it would not surprise me because that's. I don't see any indication of where someone came in and drilled down to do the steam removal. See that right there? And the guy that sent me this guitar, Rick, I hope you're doing well if you're watching the videos. But Rick had sent me his 80s Les Paul, and they had already removed the neck. And what they did, a certain luthier would always know that, okay, well, if it's a 1980, then it's going to have a 1 1/4 inch tenon. So just about what would be done is if they don't remove the fretboard, let's see, 12, 13, 14, 16. Okay. It's the 16th fret location, 16th fret location. What are the odds that those 2 screw holes are, well, not that one. Okay. But if that one was perfectly in line with that fret and this one was perfectly in line with that fret, it would mean that they removed that fret and they removed that fret and they drilled straight down, and then they had a steam removal tool, and then they removed the whole neck with the fretboard intact, and then they tapped those 2 frets back in. That's one way to remove it. The fact that this body shows no indication of ever being drilled into, I'd be willing to bet you that that thing got removed in the hot climate of a, moist climate or something like that. It just fell out. All right. So, and there's a part of me, I really wish there was some way to like just blow through these videos, but there's just not. And there's just a ton of information. And then, but when you're doing your forensics analysis of things like that, it's really awesome to learn how they did something, because you might realize that, hey, I like that. I like the idea of that. If I'm going to start building guitars in the future, maybe I'll start doing something like that. But rather than doing this round off corner here, just go straight in, and go straight across, and then straight out. And that might work really well. And it would guarantee that you could work off the center line of the body, and it might work really well. And you could even pitch the body and go in like this and actually go ahead and do your pitch platform on the back there. Okay? And that's a deep dive. So we've talked enough about how that fits right there. The next and most important thing is, as you are roughing these boards out, it's so important to not get chintzy and try to squeeze these as tight as you can, and then come in and waste all this inner material right here. On the very first cut, I spaced these enough so that I had a fairly substantial board left right here. It needed to be almost 3/4 of an inch wide, so that I would then be able to get my ears and it would have been like that right there. Came from that location right there. I think, oh, I'm sorry, no, sorry, it came from that location like that. Man, this is hard to do on camera. Okay, so when you're roughing out your first two leaves, make certain that you leave enough material right there, because this first one, this is the player's side. This is what the player's going to see. You want that ear to go right there. And it's going to guarantee you that you did the absolute best you could to make certain that the grain, like the annular rings, match up really beautifully. And then even the color and everything, once it gets glued on the back of the neck, it doesn't go to this board, it goes to that over there. But once it gets glued up on the back here, it'll be virtually invisible. And hopefully whatever grain whatever annular ring you see going on here, hopefully it will transition into that ear. And go ahead and mark them like I did right there. That's the base side pointing out. Okay, and then this being the treble, then it would go on this side over here like that. Those are called your ears. And it's not just to widen the headstock. I guess I'll have to keep talking about this. When you look at this run out right here, these are very weak. If you did a whole one-piece headstock, just the very slightest bump, this thing's going to split like the devil. It's going to just blow off right there. But by taking this straight grain wood where there is no run out, and then once, obviously it went right here, and once you, I hope that's in the camera, once you turn it down right here and glue it to the outside there, what does it do? It acts as a kind of like a strong back. If you've ever built houses, it's a straight grain, so that if it does take a fall, that's going to be a real stiff, very strong little member right there. Okay, and then not only is it strong, it's beautiful because it's from the same location. You didn't just pick up a piece of Honduran mahogany off the floor and glue it up there. Okay, and those are just things you have to think about when you're building, especially jazz guitar or like clear coat guitars. Excuse me. You got to think about what is the guitar going to look like from the very end results. And as Benedetto says, especially on the player's side, make certain that, if you had a really beautiful, vivid figure and you want to see some flame, well, maybe put that on the player's side so they can see, as he said, so they can see the pretty wood. So anyway, so after it's all said and done, what's going to happen is that right there. Okay, you got plenty of material. Don't get chintzy. Don't try to cut these real close, because you might realize that you need to slide this down a little bit, or maybe you made a mistake and you got these glued a little too high. If anything, go ahead and draw your. This is so hard to do. Go ahead and draw your guitar, your headstock, and that way, when you're gluing it all together, you know that you're not too far up or you're not too far down. Just read between the lines. So I'm sorry, it's hard to do this on camera. Okay, so that's our target right there. And so I'll just, if anything, what I would do, if for instance, maybe these two boards were just barely long enough, well, then I'm going to have to engineer it right to exactly where I'm going to be cutting. And I do this all the time, where I'm like trying to stretch lumber, and I literally will make a mark like up here, so that when I do glue this on, and I'm fitting my wood, I'm getting the squeeze out, and then I pull down and I see that dark line, and I move back up to that line, and then I go about another 32nd of an inch, and now I know that I'm guaranteed that I got plenty of wood. And if you're matching a board here to a board there that maybe you didn't have the foresight to think about, roughing that out properly, you might be jumping through your you know what, trying to figure out how to stretch that lumber and make it work. But try to plan ahead and just think about see that little arrow. I did that before I even machined all these out. I had all this laid out and had these arrows on here. It's at the base. It looks like this right here. Okay, that ought to make perfect sense. And that guarantees that that one will go there. This will go here. And now that I've got them marked, it doesn't matter. I can just throw them over there and I don't have to worry about keeping up with them anymore. 55 minutes, and I'll call it a night. I was getting ready to do some sealing on camera, but I might as well because I'm getting ready to glue it up. So if you're still here for a reason. Nitrocellulose lacquer, and you're about to see how beautiful Honduran mahogany can be. I like the idea of using the epoxy to epoxy in the little fillet. That way I don't have to worry about trying to glue a tight bond or a water-based glue in this area where I just heavily saturated it with all this nitrocellulose lacquer. And as long as it changes color, that's plenty. That's plenty. But the thing about this stuff is going to saturate into this so well, it'll just about look like it needs more priming, and you might do a little bit more on the end grain, but if you see how wet I'm applying it, that's plenty. That is plenty. But just make sure you. One of the main reasons I don't like doing work on camera is for the liability reasons, because the last thing I want to do is make it look really easy and really safe. Because there's a lot of people out there that they don't realize how dangerous just a router can be, or just how dangerous, especially the table saw. Man, table saws are a terrifying tool. And I'm 57, and I've been using these tools since I was like 9, 10, 11 years old. Dad was letting me. My grandpa's table saw, old Craftsman, is up under this tabletop, and I was using that thing when I was like 10 years old. I can't believe Dad was letting me do that. In hindsight, shame on you, Leon. That's a shame. It's a wonder I didn't lose a finger at 10 years old. But nonetheless, I got a little bit sloppy there. I need to clean that up a little bit. But nonetheless, let me get a paper towel. But it's still going to get a little bit of sanding. Not much though, because that's the finished surface right there. Okay, and then I know this is the bottom side, so by using the epoxy, it'll dry